Well, a very warm welcome to you guys. Hi, it's Cassim, and welcome to another episode of Journal Entries. As usual, guys, I want to start off by thanking you very much for joining me. You guys know that I really appreciate you sort of taking the time to listen to me as I share some ideas with you and hopefully help you to become a higher, fuller expression of who you're capable of becoming. In today's episode, there is usually I have three things that I share with you guys, but today I've actually got four journal entries which I wanted to share with you. The first is this: asking a person about their past doesn't tell you who they are, but it does show you their curve and their growth. The second is I want to talk about seeing your child as your way out is a dangerous success strategy. The third is that being a good man is not enough, right? Something has to be said for vision, for productivity, for resourcefulness, for marketing, for communication, for sales, and for leadership. And the fourth one, which is the one that I've added, which I really wanted to talk to you about, is that one way of remembering who you are is to remember who your heroes are. So those are the four things that I wanted to share with you. You guys know what this whole journaling is all about. I believe very strongly that in order to call yourself a success, as a man to call yourself a success, you need to have a successor. And I believe that journaling is really important because the reality is most people are never going to be rich. Most people are never going to get into a position of power, become a CEO, have billions of pounds to give to their children. But every single one of us has got skills. Every single one of us has knowledge. Every single one of us has our own experience. And I believe that actually that is far much more valuable to the next generation and to our family members than giving them loads of money. You've heard of that phrase, something on the lines of, it's better to teach someone how to fish than to actually give them a fish. That is essentially what goal setting, journaling allows you to be able to do. It allows you to impart onto the next generation, onto your family members, onto individuals within your community, some of the lessons that you've learned, some of the insights that you've had. And to be honest with you, some of these insights and lessons have taken you in sometimes 20 years to get. Can you imagine condensing 20 years worth of a lesson in one sentence that hopefully can inspire that next generation? So that's why I wanted to share these journal entries with you. I want to encourage you to start your own journaling entries, and actually one day give them to a neighbor, give them to your nephew, give them to your grandkids, because that, I believe, is far much more of a gift to give to them than trying to give them money or trying to help them reach their higher echelons through your power. Okay, so let's go into today's journal entries. So as you know, one of the first things that I shared with you is that I wanted to talk about asking a person about their past doesn't tell you who they are, but it does show you their growth and their curve. I was thinking about this because this week I was watching a movie called After. It's a really interesting movie. Essentially, the movie is about a guy who falls in love with a girl, but the guy, all throughout the movie, is being warned not to go out with this guy. We've got this girl who's like really innocent. She's younger than the guy. And everyone around her, her parents, her friends, even the guy's friends are all telling her, be careful, don't go out with this guy. This guy is a danger. This guy has problems. This guy's really complicated. And it becomes really evident as you watch this movie that this guy, there is something which is off. And actually, let me just firstly pause there for a second, because how many of us in life are told not to go near people, not to associate with people? If we're Muslims, you shouldn't go and hang around with Christians. If you are from the council estate, you shouldn't hang around with the rich people. If you are somebody who's of privilege or who went to eating, you shouldn't really hang around with people from an estate. If you're into football, then the people who are into rugby aren't really for us. Essentially, many of us have a cult-like mentality where I hear people all the time using this phrase, us and them, right? It's our people and it's our race, right? And sometimes I think about it and think, the fact that you're even using that language is already showing that in some way you either believe you have some kind of superiority or some kind of privilege, or that in some way you have some kind of endowment that other people do not seem to possess. There isn't a we and them. There is only all of us, right? I very strongly believe that it is vitally important that every single male come from the space and from the paradigm and from the philosophy that every single human being's life is of worthy equal value. Okay, so because if you don't believe that, then you will be lured into this kind of mindset of us and them. You know, if you guys look around at the world, it's pretty evident that we are living in a world at the moment where the world is very divisive, right? The world is being torn apart. And I believe that part of the reason why the world is being torn apart at the moment is in part because we are so involved with our emotion that our emotion and our anger and our frustration and our resentment is more important than progress. Many of us would rather say, well, it's not fair that they come from a very wealthy background and I don't come from a very wealthy background and they have privilege. It's not fair that the black man is being treated in this way, but the white man is being treated in this way. Okay, I get that, and that's important, and absolutely that is an absolutely valid argument, but are you going to be preoccupied with the emotion and the anger, or is your job essentially to work your way around that, to use your life, to use what you know, to use yourself as a vehicle to balancing out the world, to balancing out how things are perceived? For example, let me give you an example of what I mean by this, and I've gone off on a tangent, but I think this is so important. One of my life's missions is to change the perception that people have of black people, because what I've realized is that if you've never met a black person and you don't have a black person as a friend, like an actual friend, like somebody who you hang around, somebody who comes to your house, somebody who you spent time around, the reality of life is that you are going to get the perceptions based on your perceptions about black people, based on what you've heard, based on what you've seen on the news, based on what people have told you, right? If you've never actually interacted with a black person. And so when I live my day-to-day life, one of the things that I'm constantly trying to look at is when I come in contact with somebody is I want to show them what black people are truly like. So all the time, I'm always polite to everybody. I'm always asking people questions. I'm always open-minded. And I'm not being like that because that is just naturally the way that I am. I'm being like that deliberately because I have to try and illustrate to other people and try to balance out the world. Because what I want people to get to the point of in their life is that if they see something on the news where a black person has stabbed somebody, I don't want them to say, see, that is another reason why black people are like that. No. For me, what I want that person to say is, hold on a minute, I know that particular black person has stabbed somebody, but hold on a minute, what about Cass? Cass is not like that. So actually, this person is not a representation of the whole race as black people. Actually, that's just one individual who's decided to do that. And I think so many of us don't really see the world from that perspective. So many of us don't really see the world from that paradigm. And so what I would share with you, just firstly beginning off, is I think it's actually really important sometimes to break away from the mold and figure out for yourself, okay, I know that people say black people are like this, I know that people say that rich people are like this, but have you actually ever met a rich person? Have you ever actually interacted with somebody who's got wealth? You talk about people who went to Eton as being a certain way, but have you actually ever interacted with somebody who's gone to Eton? Have you ever had a conversation with them? Have you ever sat down? You know, one of the things that's been really interesting for me is meeting people whose religions oppose mine. So, for example, I've been fascinated with meeting Christians, meeting Buddhists, meeting individuals who are into Taoism, meeting individuals who are Sikhs, because I've been trying to understand clearly, if I believe that Islam is the best faith and they believe it, clearly there is from their perspective, the world must be right. So I've been trying to understand, why does this person think in this way? Why does this person see the world from that perspective? What advantage does that have in their own life? So that's just the first thing that I wanted to share, and it's kind of taking me off on a tangent, but I think it's really important that I share that with you. But the other really important thing, which is the point that I really was trying to get to, is around this point of the curve. It is very, very true that you can't really judge somebody based on how you asking them about what their past is. Of course not, right? If I told you that I was arrested for drink driving, that I had been tasered, the fact that I had got myself in there, that doesn't really tell you who I am as a person, does it? Right? But let me tell you, if you've just met me today anyway, but let me tell you what it does. It does show you the curve and the growth that the person has been. So indeed, of course, you can't judge me based on where I've been and the mistakes that I've made. But by me sharing with you my story, by me sharing with you what my past has done, it actually does allow you to be able to ascertain to who is this person that I'm dealing with. Is this person someone who's learning from their life? Is this person somebody who's learning from their mistakes? Is this person somebody who's gained a level of insight, a level of clarity, a level of consciousness as they've been developing, as they've been growing? Because I think so many of us in life, we don't realize that if we were to actually look at our life over the last, let's say, 10 years, that many of us haven't actually grown. We haven't learned anything from our life. We haven't gained a level of clarity, a level of understanding about ourselves, a level of purpose. We haven't really grasped what our life is all about, what we're good at, what we're not good at, what our vices are. It's shocking that you would speak to somebody, and I speak to loads of people, where you ask them, what is your vice? And they have no idea, right? And clearly, if you've identified what your vice is, and every single one of us has a vice, whether it be shopping, whether it be alcohol, whether it be pornography, whether it be sex, whether it be women, whether it be being addicted to working out, whether it be addicted to work, every single one of us has an area where we're vulnerable. And if you've identified that for yourself, one of the things that you should be doing is setting up blocks and boundaries and setting yourself up ways in which you are not exposed when, if ever, you're ever in that position where you're not weakened, where you're not vulnerable. And I just think it's really, really important for us to identify in our lives about the curve that we're on. Have we actually grown as people? Have we actually developed as people? Have we started paying attention to our lives? Because one of the things that I was writing down, and I think it was last week, is I was writing down that really life is all about kind of three things. It's all about lessons. What lessons are we learning? And the other thing that I said life was all about is, I said that life is all about, I can't exactly remember exactly what I was writing because it was just something that I was thinking about. But I remember that one of the things that I was writing down is life is, one of the things that life is about the lessons we've learned. And they say that sometimes in the pursuit to, if we fall down, in the pursuit to not look bad, in the pursuit to not look like crap, many of us end up getting up too quickly and never picking anything up. We never learn anything from our lives. We never learn anything from our mistakes. And so one of the things that I would share with you is start thinking about what you've actually learned from your life. I mean, if you're 28 years of age right now, you should be starting to think, by 28, what have I learned about myself? What have I learned about my life? What have I learned I'm not good at? What have I learned I am good at? What have I learned that I don't want from my life? What have I learned that I do want from my life? What mistakes have I made that I don't want to repeat? And what blocks and strategies have I put in place so that I don't get back to that place? For example, if you're 30 now, and you have no savings, the question that you should be asking yourself is why? Why don't I have any savings? If I was to lose my job tomorrow, God knows if something, God forbid, were to happen and I lose my job, what is my strategy for getting out of that? What is my strategy for dealing with that? Because we know anything can happen, right? So if you haven't even thought about that, my question is, what are you doing? And I was just thinking about that and thinking about my life. And it's just something that I wanted to share with you, but I don't know if it's useful for you or not. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I would share with you that I was thinking about is around this concept of seeing your children as a way out being a really dangerous strategy. It's interesting because I have spent a considerable amount of my time around people. And one of the questions that I've been trying to ascertain from people is, why are you not succeeding? Why are you unhappy? Why are you so angry? Why are you so resentful? And for most people, if you've not really spoken to hundreds and hundreds of people, what I'm sharing with you now is going to sound almost ridiculous. It's almost going to be like, oh, come on, Cass. Surely somebody would know if this was happening to them. But you would be shocked at the amount of adults who do not like their parents. They are really resentful towards their parents. And of course, and I'm talking about people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Some people genuinely do not like their parents. They love them because they unconditionally love their parents, but they very much are resentful towards their parents. And so my question was, why? What's going on? Why are so many adults so resentful of their parents? And part of the reason is because when they were younger, their parents used them as a way out. Their parents used them as a way to prove that they were good, to prove that they can become successful. And in the pursuit to do that, what ended up happening was that the parents ended up manipulating their children. The parents ended up forcing their children and pigeonholing their children into going in a direction that their children didn't instinctively feel. Their children didn't instinctively want to go towards. Right? Their parents did not expose to them everything which was available so that the child could make the decision that they wanted in their own life for them. And it sounds bizarre to say that because a lot of people will think, well, Cass, obviously if you reach the age of 18, then just go and do whatever you want. But unfortunately, the reality is it doesn't quite work like that. Actually, one of the things that really brought this home for me was when I was studying individuals who had been essentially abused by their parents, I guess is the word to use. So, for example, somebody had been beaten by their parents. Their parents were murderers, or their parents were serial killers, or their parents raped somebody, or their parents molested them as a child. And one of the things that I was fascinated with is that those individuals who had suffered all of that trauma and all that abuse still love their parents in the same way as if me and you loved our parents. And my question was, how? How can your parents have done something like that to you and you still love them? It doesn't make sense to me, because from the way that I saw the world, if I had been through something like that, I wouldn't even want to speak to them. They don't exist as far as I was concerned. And yet, the situation was that all these individuals who've experienced this, they still love their parents. Of course, they didn't like what their parents did and what their parents put them through, but they still had this innate yearning to speak to their parents, to have a bond with their parents. And it taught me that people who love you can do really bad things to you and manipulate you, and you can still love them. And what that made me think and realize is that at some point, every single one of us has to get to a point where we almost rebel against our parents. And I was thinking that, I remember when I had to basically say to my mum that I did not want to become an estate agent, that I didn't want to become a doctor. And as an African person, I know this will sound ridiculous, but as somebody who comes from a black community from Africa, this is something which is ridiculous. To say to your parents that you don't want to become a doctor, you don't want to become a lawyer, you don't want to become an accountant, is like, basically, it's like your parents have failed. And one of the things that I tell people is that every single one of us has two dreams in life. We have the dreams that our parents had for us, i.e. our parents wanted us to become a doctor, they wanted us to be into football, they wanted us to go to a university. That's the first dream every one of us has. The second dream that we all have is a dream that we have for ourselves. That might be to become happy, it might be to find a relationship, it might be to get married, it might be to start a business. And there has to come a point in our lives when every single one of us decides that we are going to break away from the dreams that our parents have for us and marry the ones that we want to pursue. And many of us in life never actually get to that point. We never break away from the manipulation, from the coercion, from the guilt tripping of our parents. If you actually look at many people and you look at the lives that they're living, they're not living their own lives. They're living the lives that their parents expect them to live. They're living the lives that are going to get the most affirmation, the most, I don't know what the word is, that people are going to get approval. That's the word I'm looking for. That people are going to get the most approval from. If they do this, then their parents will approve of what they're doing. And I think that in order to truly live an abundant life and to live a life of freedom and to live a life which is just full of potential, at some point you will have to break away from your caregiver's vision for your life. And I know that that's tough, but a lot of people use that strategy of manipulating their children, and using their children as a way out. And a lot of people don't even realize that. A lot of people don't realize that their parents are using them, because most of us, our philosophy is that sincerity is a test of truth. We believe that if our parents love us, surely the decisions that they're going to make are going to be in the best interest for us. Which is, as many of you will know, that is not true, right? We would love for that to be the truth, but it isn't. We all have our own agendas, we all have our own history, our own fears, our own doubts, we all have our own hopes. And really, even as parents, we can only do all that we can do based on what we know. I say to people all the time that your parents can only take you as far as they've been themselves, right? Your parents can love you, your parents can want the best for you, but look, if your mum and dad have grown up in an era where, I don't know, they don't understand technology, or they don't understand why you would want to go to university. Some people have grown up in a world where university isn't something which is an expectation, right? It just isn't. The expectation is get out of school and go straight into work. That is the expectation. Some people have grown up in a world where actually the moment you can, get married and settle down. But you've got to decide for yourself what is your truth. What do you want from your own life? And I think if you want to live an abundant life, that's just something that you have to do. And unfortunately, I say this to people because this is something that I call an inconvenient truth. It's hard for me to tell people that even though their own parents might be great human beings, that it is possible for their parents to make bad decisions. It is possible for their parents to make choices that are not in the best interest of the child. The parent might not be conscious. The parent might be going through let me give you a perfect example of this. I meet a lot of people and their parents went through a divorce. And I say to them, well, tell me what that experience was. And a lot of people were neglected as children when their parents went through a divorce, because the parent was in so much anger, so much frustration, so much rage at the fact that this person has pulled them through the courts, they've left them, they've abandoned them, they promised at the altar that they were going to stay together forever, but things have changed, things have developed, and this person now wants to get divorced. They want to take the dogs, they want to take custody of the children, and the anger consumes them, right? To the degree where basically their life is over. Their life is over. They don't care that they have children. This person has done this thing to them and their life is now over. They've broken their dreams. They've broken their desires, everything that they expected. They wanted to be, for example, a stay-at-home mother. And this man, because he's decided he wants to get divorced, because he's cheated, because he's had an affair, whatever it is, he's decided that he now doesn't want to be with her, which is broken and shattered her entire vision. And some people go crazy and mental to the degree where they just neglect their children. They don't really care anymore. Their life doesn't really have meaning anymore. The thing that they desired the most was to have somebody who loves them unconditionally. And they thought that the way to keep them was to have a child. Because if they have a child with them, that this person surely is going to stay around. And I know this sounds almost kind of sick when you think about it from our perspective, because we have perspective, right? We have hindsight. But when you're in it, when you're in the storm itself, you can't see things from that perspective. And that's just something that I was just journaling about, and I was just thinking about. And I was thinking, boy, if you're not aware of your parents' agenda, and you're not aware that your parents are not conscious, and you're not aware what it is that your parents are wanting, because your parents want something, it is very easy to end up 40, 50 and resent your parents because they steered you in the wrong direction. Your parents told you that the only options for you was to go out and get a job and work for a company. Now the company's gone bust, and they never told you about going to university. They never told you about developing multiple skills. They never told you about looking at your gift, looking at what your purpose is, about saving money. They never told you that. And so the frustration is, what if my parents, who are the be and all, who are deities, they should know this. They should have told me. And if you think like that, it is very, 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 very easy to go 30, 40, 50 years and get to a point where you are really resentful of your parents. I don't know. Just something that I was thinking about. The third thing that I wanted to share with you, which I was thinking about, is around this concept of being a good man is not enough. Something has to be said for vision, productivity, resourcefulness, marketing, communication, sales, and leadership. So the reason why I thought that this was, I was journaling about this, and I thought this was really important, is because so many times I come across good guys. I come across males, guys who are genuinely really good guys, and they're working really hard and they're doing their best to become a success, to become winners in their own lives. And many times they're actually failing. Many times they are tired, they're exhausted. Many times they feel depressed. And one of the questions that I was wondering is, why is that? And part of the thing which I was thinking about is that these individuals got told that the way to become successful was to go and work really hard, but nobody ever told them about the importance of learning various multi-skilled, about basically wholeness. Nobody told them about being a whole person. In other words, what I found a lot of the error that a lot of guys make is that we think if you are successful, everything else will follow. And I've got to tell you, I was of that mindset. I believed if you become successful, if you make it, if you've got loads of money, everything else will follow. This is not true, right? It is part of the reason why I came up with what I call the A to Z and the art of living. I believe that essentially that there are two aspects to life. The first is what I call the A to Z, which is you've basically got to figure out how to get what you want, right? Pretty much the rule is, if somebody else has already got it, if you follow the same steps that they took to get what they've already got, you will be there or thereabouts, right? That's pretty much it. If somebody knows how to play football and you follow the same training and the same kind of nutrients and everything that they do, if you follow it, there or thereabouts, you will get you will become as good as them. Now, clearly, when I say that, I mean there are clearly some people who are naturally gifted. It might take you longer. You may have to practice harder, right? We know that. But the basis of it is the foundations are very, very, very simple. And if you follow them, you will there or thereabouts get the same kind of results. The other part of life is what I call the art of living. The art of living is more, it's called an art because art is obviously subjective. If you look at a painting, somebody might look at a painting and see one thing, but somebody else might look at a painting and see something completely different. And that's the way, if you think about emotions and spirituality and what is success and what is a good life, all of those are subjective. What I think is a good life is different to what you think is a good life. You might think that to have a good life, you've got to do stuff with charity. You've got to be able to be married. You've got to have children. I might say that my definition of success is to have loads of cars, a massive house, be the CEO of a company, be married, get to go on loads of holidays a year. Now, that doesn't mean that my life is wrong. It doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with that life or that I'm unhappy. It just means my version of what brings me fulfillment and happiness is that way. Yours is different to mine, right? Some people may want 3 kids. Some people may want 8 kids. Does it really matter whether you have 3 kids or 8 kids? It's up to you. Whatever you define makes life worthwhile is whatever makes life worthwhile for you. And what I found was that a lot of people are taught about the A to Z, but a lot of people are not taught about the art of living. Most people don't know what they define success to be. Most people, if you ask most people, tell me what you define success to be, and they told you, and then you said to them, okay, for the next 2 months, I'm going to follow you around and I'm going to watch what you do. I'm going to watch what you say. I'm going to see the way you interact with people. And I'm going to see whether what you've told me success is matches anything near what your life is. Because if somebody, for example, says that the way that I define success to be is success means that I have a really good relationship with my children. If you follow them around for 2 months, and they spend the majority of their time at work, that kind of tells you a lot, doesn't it? Right? But if you follow them around for 2 months and all the time they're talking about, I'm going to be going to my child's football game. They talk about their children all the time. They taking pictures of their children. They schedule their life around their children. It kind of tells you what the person values, doesn't it? And the reality is, guys, if you look at what most people define to be success and to be in a great life or an abundant life or a life that's meaningful, and then you look at their results, their habits, it doesn't usually match. In fact, this is usually actually where I come in, because many times in my job is to literally help people who are highly successful but are unhappy. Because usually this is one of the areas we'd look at. We'd look at, okay, you say, let's firstly determine, you talk, how do you define success? And now let's look at how it is that you define joy and happiness and an abundant life. Now let's see if it matches up. Because a lot of successful people believe this strategy. We believe if I become successful, then everything else will follow. It doesn't work like that. That's why you've got people who are highly successful, CEOs of companies. They're individuals who have loads of people working for them. Yet their marriage is falling apart. Yet they don't have a relationship with their children, right? Yet their marriage is good, but their children hate them. Because a lot of people tend to think that if I'm respected in the workplace, then I will automatically be respected in the home. It doesn't work like that. The relationships are a completely different set of skills, and mastering relationship is a completely different set of skills and a different set of principles than being at work and being respected at work. In work, you're respected for your competence, meaning your ability to produce results, your ability to lead, your ability to solve problems. When it comes to communication, it's your empathy, your ability to listen, your ability to ask questions, your ability to care. Do you see what I'm saying? See, man, I'm giving you guys too much stuff here. So this is where life, I was thinking about this and I was thinking, this is where so many people are getting this wrong and are making this error in judgment. And I tell you this because I made the same mistakes. That's why I'm only telling you this. I wouldn't be able to tell you this unless I'd made the mistake. I made a promise that I would only ever teach people and coach people about stuff that I personally have experienced or tried or done myself. So what I would essentially share with you is, look, if you're a good man and you're a good person and you're not living up to your potential and your life isn't as vibrant as it can be, my question to you is, look at some of these other areas that I've shared. Look at how resourceful you are. Look at how marketable you are and how much marketing knowledge you have. Understand the importance of your vision. Do you even have a vision? Do you even know what a vision is? Look at communication. Look at sales. Look at leadership. Do you even know the difference between management and leadership? Do you understand what makes a leader and what makes a manager? What is the difference? Have you ever read any leadership books on it? You know, I say to people that the single number one crisis in the world, if somebody said to me, Cassim, what is the number one thing that is missing in the world? If there was one thing, Cass, that would solve many of the issues in the world, what would it be? Is one thing: leadership. Leadership is the single number one thing that is missing in the world. By far. People don't believe in themselves. People's belief in humanity. I'm not going to even get into leadership because it's way too complicated. But the point being is, when you start activating some of these other skills, some of these other giftings, like leadership, like sales, like resourcefulness, like vision, like communication, like productivity, like marketing, that's when your life takes on a whole different level. Right, I'm going to be doing a speech on Sunday. I do these speeches on Sunday. And do you know what the speech is? The speech on Sunday is, I've entitled it, what have I entitled it? Reposition Yourself. And the reason why I've entitled it Reposition Yourself is because if you are talented and gifted, but you're positioned wrong, you will be unsuccessful. Meaning, if you are you have the potential to be a great singer, but number one, you've never been trained. Number two, you're in the wrong location, right? You live in the middle of nowhere. You don't go to any concerts. Nobody ever hears you apart from your own family. See, you can be the equivalent to the Beatles, but no one will ever hear you. You can be the most single greatest artist to ever live, make more albums than Michael Jackson, the Beatles, all combined. But if no one ever hears you beyond your own family, then how can you be? So that's why I talk about positioning. And so that's why I'm going to be talking about positioning on Sunday, because it's so important. And when you start to position yourself in vision, in marketing, in sales, you start positioning yourself in communication. That's how you become valuable now. That's how your life takes on. You are basically become a whole person. You have loads of different dimensions. You become very unique. You become unique because most people don't have leadership. Most people aren't resourceful. Most people aren't got marketing skills and sales and communication and vision. Most people haven't got all these things. So when you start getting all of them, you become a unique individual. I don't know. Something that I was thinking about. Okay, so let me finish it off with the final one that I was journaling about, which is that one way to remember who you are is to remember who your heroes are. So, I was thinking about this statement and this comment because I was wondering, what do you do when you're lost? What do you do when you get to a point in your life where you're like, I don't know who I am anymore? I thought that I was going to be a mother, but I've got to the point now where I don't even know who I am anymore. I thought that I was going to be somebody who was going to be a great father, but now I'm getting divorced. What's happened, right? I thought that I was going to have a great marriage, but somehow I'm getting divorced. My missus is filed for divorce. Like, what is going on? Who is this person who I've ended up becoming? And I was thinking about this because a lot of us, we do get to that transition period where we're about to transition and morph and look at who we really are as people, right? Because a lot of us tend to attach who we are to our identity, to our role, to our job. And what happens when that role disappears? What do you do when your entire life you've been wanting to become a mother, but your children have left home? You feel lost. You're like, who am I now? Without my children, my children have all left home. Who is left, right? And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that one of the ways in which you remember who you are is to remember who your heroes are. Because particularly men, and this is much more important for men than it is for women, because men, we identify ourselves via who we're trying to become. This is why the role of the father is so important to guys, because we men learn from seeing. We literally see our father do this and we do that. If we see our father wear a tie a certain way, we will wear a tie a certain way. If our daddy loves golf, we will like golf, right? It's just typical. Men, we learn from what we see other men do, right? And I think that this is part of the reason why the male role is so important. And actually, I was reading something about what leads to countries collapsing, and this article was talking about the fact that if you want an entire country, an entire community to collapse, break down the fathers. If you start getting rid of the fathers, if you want to break down a family, break down the father. Because if the father is supposed to be the foundation, meaning he's not at the top of the fucking family tree, he's at the bottom. I have to tell lads this all the time, because most lads think that the leader is supposed to be at the top of the tree. No, the father is the foundation, which means he's at the bottom. He holds the entire family together, right? He is the foundation for which everything is built, meaning he has to protect, he has to provide. I don't even want to get into it, but you get my point. And so, where was I going with this? And so one of the things that's really important is that the male, if you collapse the male, if the male starts drinking whatever, you can almost definitely get that it's going to affect the entire household. It's going to infect the entire community. It's going to infect the entire nation. And so I think that one of the things that's really important is, and this is part of the reason why I was looking at this, is to look at who actually is your role models. Because I've found, and this will sound bizarre, when I've asked people, who are your role models? A lot of people don't know who their role models are. A lot of people don't know. So if you don't know who your role models are, who are you comparing yourself against? Right? And I know you're going to say, well, Cassim, we shouldn't compare ourselves against people, blah, blah, blah. I get that. There is indeed a role for that, because we're all individuals and we should be ourselves. But we've also got to have a reference for tracking our growth, a reference for tracking. Hold on a minute. Have I gone off track? Am I being a bit too abrupt? Am I being like, how is my communication with my missus? Right? Hold on a minute. Am I spending enough time with my family? Am enough time at home? Am I spending too much time on the computer? You've got to be able to ascertain that. And to be able to ascertain that, you need a comparison, right? And a lot of people don't know who their role models are. I think I've told you guys in a separate journal entries before that I spent about a week asking people what they define to be a good man. Like, I was asking people, I asked literally, it must have been over 100 people. I asked them, tell me what you define to be a good man. Like, give me the attributes. If you saw a good man, tell me what you would define to be a good man. And so people would tell me all these things. They would say to me, he has to be a man, a real man has to be someone who's strong. And I would say, what do you mean by strong? And they would say to me, he has to be strong both in terms of physique, but also mentally. So loads of guys said to me, in fact, I did say on journal entries, so a lot of lads would say to me that if a guy is strong, but then he beats his missus, then he isn't really strong, because whilst he's strong physically, he's strong mentally and emotionally. That's what's driven him to get that angry and have that less self-discipline and control, that he would beat his missus. His philosophy is off. And here's where it got really interesting. So I would say to people, so you've just described to me what you think a good man is your father what you've just described to me? And every single person I asked said that their father was not what they just explained to me. And I thought, that's a really interesting outcome. Because I would have thought that when people were describing to me what they define to be a good man, then of course the male in their lives would be exactly who they'd be describing, but it isn't. A lot of guys, we have grown up in a world where actually most of us don't have role models. And so actually for me, and this is something that I try to encourage males particularly, is you've got to really drum down who your role models are. Because if you're not careful, you will end up losing who you are because you've lost sight of who you're trying to become. And if you don't know who you are when you get lost, you don't know where it is that you're supposed to be heading towards. And so I guess the final question that I would share with you is, who are your role models? Who are you looking and to become like? Who are you looking to, grab some of the... Now, okay, I'm going to expand on this. My God, I've extended this too far, but I really need to touch on this because this is important. I hear you saying, but Cassim, hold on a minute. Because, I shouldn't be trying to be like other people. No, what you should be doing is you should be a thief. Meaning, you should be taking elements of all the people who you really like and imbuing them within who you are as a person. Let me give you an example. So, for example, I wanted to become somebody who was a visionary, somebody who was creative. So I looked at Steve Jobs and I was like, he's a visionary. He's a guy who's creative. He thinks outside the box. I want to be like him. And so I took that element of him. But then I was like, hold on a minute. But he was abrupt to people. He'd fired people. It was too much. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get rid of those elements, but I'm going to bring some of those to me. What else? I looked at people like Nelson Mandela, and I thought, ooh, Nelson Mandela. I tell you what, he went to prison, and the people who he was trying to free, the black people, were the guards in the prison, and they would treat him like shit. And when he left, he forgave them. I would like to be like that. I would like to be the kind of person who forgives people even though they may have done the worst possible thing. I would love to be like that. Okay, let me take a little bit of that, and I will take that for myself. But Nelson Mandela, though, had to give up over 30 years of his life to being in prison, to the degree where he didn't even see his own child when his child died. So I was like, that's a problem for me. I don't want that, so I'm going to get rid of that part of it. So do you see what I mean when I say you start imbuing and you start stealing and you start getting all the best bits? Because when you start doing that and you start practicing it, you're not becoming like the people, but you are skilling and you're refining more of who you are. Does that kind of make sense? I don't know if I've articulated that in the best way, but I just thought it's just really important to really look at who your heroes are, because a lot of people just don't know who their heroes are. They have no idea. Right? Some people, their father, some people just don't have a father there, or their father is not a role model in any way. So, yeah, something for you to think about. I just thought that I would share those with you. So, as usual, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, Cassim on YouTube. I hope that what I've shared with you today was useful for you. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I shall speak to you in the next episode. Bye for now.